I'm Frances Lopez. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles County Brewers Guild. We're here at Eagle Rock Brewery today to talk to some talented members of the Los Angeles Philharmonic about music, beer, and the Casual Fridays concert series. Good to see you again.
Hey, Frances, nice to see you as well.
Last time I saw you was at the last Casual Fridays,
That's
I
right.
believe.
It was a while ago, yeah.
Have you been brewing?
You know, I've been playing the trumpet for almost 40 years, and I've been a home brewer for about 25 years. So I have 2 little kids now, so that's what I'm focusing on instead of brewing. But I still drink a lot of beer, so I'm covering my bases.
Beautiful.
I think the best beer I ever made was a rye IPA. I actually made it here in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
I took meticulous notes, really paid attention to what I was doing, and years later, I went back to try and re-brew that beer because I wanted it to be exactly the same, recreate that moment. And it totally didn't work. And it didn't happen. And I feel like that's a great place to start our conversation, is that you can't really, making beer is like making music in that when there's a human element, it's going to be a different experience every time. You can't go back and recreate that. And that's something I'd like our listeners to think about, is that experience is the moment. It's happening right now. This beer will never be remade the same way again. So I love the Casual Friday model. I think it's brilliant. It's almost like a youth concert where we address the audience, educate, and sort of invite them in to the experience, break down those barriers so they can understand that this is not a scary thing that you have to know a lot about to enjoy it. You don't. I mean, bringing it back to the beer, you don't have to know anything. You have to know if you like it or you don't.
Exactly.
And you got to try new things occasionally too. It makes me laugh when people say, I don't like classical music. Or I don't like, I don't like beer. It's like saying you don't like cheese. I mean, there's so many different types, and you have to try those things. Certainly there are preconceptions about what those things are, but usually preconceptions, misconceptions are wrong. Yeah. When you get in there, you start to realize it's not so scary.
What do you think is the most common misconception about classical music?
Hands down, the most common misconception about classical music is that you have to know a lot to enjoy it. That's just not true. Of course, it helps to know, and you kind of get swept along that journey, and the more you know, the more interesting it is. But you don't have to walk in with a PhD in musicology to listen to a Mozart symphony. There's a visceral experience that happens, and if you just release yourself to it, that's the point. Beer is like the ultimate social lubricant, right?
Exactly.
So when people are comfortable, their defenses drop, and that's when they are able to discover things. And so I think the Casual Friday model of having people drinking beer and everything's relaxed, you're more open to those nuances that the composer wants you to experience. It's brilliant. Now, we can't drink while we're on stage, unfortunately, but it's nice to get handed a beer afterwards. So,
what would you say is the best beer and musical pairing?
If I were to pair a piece of music to this beer, for example, whenever I go to a brewery for the first time, I like to order a Kolsch or a Helles or something super light and pure and simple, because I want to see what the brewer did with those 4 components that beer is made from: water, barley, hops, and yeast. And what kind of magic were they able to do with that? So the composer that comes to mind when I'm drinking this Kolsch which is brilliant, by the way, is like a Mozart piano concerto. There's nothing overly complex about Mozart's music. If you look at it on paper, there's just not a lot there. But when it lifts off from notation to the music, it becomes this transcendent, amazing experience that you can't explain. It's like the Beatles. How do the Beatles sound so great, and people covering the Beatles do not sound so great? So I feel like that's the same thing with Mozart. There's a simplicity and a balance and just a perfection that I look for in this type of beer. This beer will not hide imperfections of any kind. If you have a kitchen sink double chocolate stout that you serve with a spoon and a knife, that's going to hide a lot of imperfections. Maybe that's Wagner, I don't know. But I would pair Mozart Piano Concerto with this Kolsch. Calling even most of the music we do classical music is such a misnomer, because we, of all orchestras in this country, in fact, we do more world premieres and new pieces than anybody, by a lot, by a big margin.
And you collaborate with contemporary artists all the time, which is also super fun.
Visual artists, dancers, it doesn't matter. But I think that calling it classical music is a bit of a put-off. It's just music. If classical music is going to survive, it has to change and adapt. Nothing but respect for the masters and the composers who have paved the way for the new music that we do here now. But we have to figure out a good balance between the old styles and the new. I mean, you got breweries like, Dogfish Head brewing with twigs that they found outside the brewery. That's cool, nobody's doing that. And what's great, especially about world premieres, is you are experiencing that moment for the first time with a whole room full of people. That is awesome. It's like if we all drank the same beer together.
The universal cheers.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
How has it been like for you interacting with other guests?
Everybody's played the trumpet, or they had a brother who played the trumpet, or there's a trumpet in their closet or something like that. I love the fact that they can come up and ask questions hands-on. I mean, I have questions about brewing that I'd love to ask you, that you can't get that sort of insight without talking to a person who's steeped in doing it day in and day out. And I think the same is true with what we do. I think about the trumpet a lot, I think about classical music a lot, but I'm just a normal person. I'm very approachable, I love talking about it. I mean, I could talk about beer all day and I could talk about trumpet all day. So those are two topics that, it's great to have an opportunity to connect in that way. The great thing about the LA Phil Casual Friday series is that you are coming for the concert and staying for the drinks. So you're having a social engagement and you're getting to hear some world-class music by one of the best orchestras in a world-class venue as well.